Back and into our Q&A, the energy price cap has officially been lifted. That means millions of households are now facing a huge hike in their monthly bills. Well, let's take you through the figures. The price cap is increasing by 54% or £693 a year. That means annual energy costs for many are jumping from £1,277 to £1,971. It's estimated that'll impact around 22 million households. Now, the price increase is being driven largely by the cost of wholesale energy, which we've seen has risen sharply. And, of course, it's not just energy bills. National insurance contributions are also going up by 1.25 percentage points this month. And the rate of inflation, well, that is expected to reach a 40-year high of 8.7%. Well, over the next half hour, we are going to be looking at some of the questions you have been sending in about the cost of living crisis. Joining me now is a panel of experts. We have Richard Neudegg, Head of Regulation and Compliance at USwitch, Charlotte Jessop, Director of Looking After Your Pennies, Tara Evans, Head of Consumer at The Sun. And we're also joined by Karen Isaac, who works 2 jobs herself and is on universal credit. Well, thank you very much to all of our guests for being with us today. We really appreciate your input over the next half hour with questions from our audience. I want to start, before we get into the advice, I want to start, Karen, with you and with your situation, because, as we said, you're working 2 jobs, you're claiming universal credit. What does the cost of living crisis feel like and look like from where you're standing?
Terrible. Just wondering where it's all going to end. I'm 64. As you just said, I've got 2 jobs, or can't get above universal credit. It's just terrible. I live rurally, and so my house is heated by oil. And as you all know, the price of that has gone up so intensely. I'm just walking around with a hot water bottle a lot of the time because the house is so cold.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, we are going to come to questions from our audience as well, but certainly as you are relying on oil, I wonder, Richard, if there's any advice you have for Karen in this sort of short term on what she might be able to do for those bills.
It's really difficult for those on heating oil, to be honest. There's no real regulation, there's no clause, there's no price cap in heating oil. Most people who've got heating oil are already used to the tips of when best to buy it, when best to top up and things, But Karen's right, like, the bills have gone up massively there, and there actually is very little that can be done. More needs to be done, really, to protect those that are reliant on heating oil.
Yeah, and I imagine, Charlotte, certainly, you've been hearing lots of people in Karen's situation. Not everybody is reliant on oil in the way that Karen is. Have you got any advice for her there?
I mean, it is a tough one, and a lot of it is outside of the individual's control. I think it would be wrong of me to sit here and sort of suggest little things that she can do around her house, when actually there's a much bigger picture going on here. I think that probably a lot of the things that she's doing already are over and above what we should expect of people to be doing in this situation. But I think, keeping an eye on the money for people who are in a similar situation. Keep an eye on the money. Make sure you know what the figures are. And, if there are little things that you can do around your house, then do those, because it will make the difference in the long run. But I think what she's doing already sounds like plenty.
And Tara, do you have a lot of people, or do you hear from a lot of people in Karen's sort of position?
Yeah, our post bags are completely full of people in Karen's situation. And one thing I would say is there are grants and hardship funds that you can apply for. I would really urge her to contact someone like Turn to Us and search for a grant. I would also try your local council, because they will have pots of money as part of the household support fund, which you can apply for. All of this is discretionary, so there's no guarantee you'll get it, but it's always worth trying those routes as well.
OK, well, brilliant. Thanks very much for that, for kicking us off. We are going to get into the questions that you have been sending in. Thank you for doing so, with a question from Michael, first of all. And Richard at USwitch, I'm going to direct this first question to you. So Michael asks, is it worth shopping around for a better electricity deal, or will all suppliers be at the maximum price now? Richard, what do you make of that?
Yeah, so those standard variable plans that most of us are on, almost all suppliers are at or very, very close to that price cap. So it's going to be very difficult to get less than that. I mean, we've spent at USwitch 20 years telling people to shop around to save on energy, but at the moment, really, there aren't good fixed deals out there because of the conditions in the wholesale market. So for the vast majority of this, unfortunately, sticking with what you have is probably going to be the best or very close to the best that you can do. It is worth setting up alerts and things in case there are deals that come back on the market. We have seen a couple of suppliers who've offered decent fixed rate deals to their existing customers, but they appear very, very briefly and then get snapped up. But even then, they're not a significant discount to the price cap. They're going to be freezing the kind of price cap level or even slightly above, and are more about protecting yourself against potential even future rises to the price cap further down the line.
Yeah, we've certainly heard the same from people like Martin Lewis saying, just stick, do nothing, it's the only thing you can do, which sounds sort of depressing, but it is the reality that we're living in at the moment. Let's go straight to another question. This one from Rochelle, and I'm going to throw this one, Charlotte, towards you, so Looking After Your Pennies. Rochelle asks, what can I do if I can't afford the direct debit amount that my supplier is now wanting from me? Charlotte, what would you say to that? What can you do if you simply cannot afford it?
Yeah, this is a really tough one, and I don't think this person is going to be alone in this situation. There's been lots of people receiving letters and been like, well, how am I supposed to pay for this? I think that the thing that I'm urging people to do is to speak to their suppliers. So make contact and have this conversation. Your supplier will have to have this conversation with you and create a plan about how you can afford it, essentially. I mean, I'm assuming that they've looked at, other areas of their finances and made sure that any wiggle room that they do have, they've already addressed. But I think speak to the suppliers is the first thing. And if you can't do anything there, reach out to people like Citizens Advice. They will be able to take a more sort of holistic view at your financial situation and see if there's any other support or options that are available to her.
Karen, I'd like to bring you in on that because this is lived experience for you as well. I think you said your oil company was asking for £800 or so up front, something you couldn't afford. So you've been sitting in the cold as a result of that. I mean, if you were speaking to Rochelle, who can't afford that direct debit, is there anything you've done that might be able to help her?
At the top of my head, really, as like everyone, the experts are saying, there isn't a lot you can do at the moment. There really isn't. I've been told that you can really do something like try to join a cooperative round where you live, try to find other people that are buying, the same sort of fuel as you to heat their home, and maybe join together and buy together because it could be cheaper. But I don't know a lot about that. But that is one thing I've been told and have found out about.
OK, that's really interesting. Right, some lived experience and sort of advice from Karen there as well. Adrian has a question, and this one I'm going to send Tara your way. Adrian asks, at what stage will we see prices come back down? Tara, have you got any thoughts on that?
It's really hard to say when prices are going to come back down, but we do know that the price cap will be reevaluated in October this year. Really worryingly, estimates out today have suggested that it's going to go up by £600, which isn't the news that anybody wants. And that will mean that energy bills will have doubled in the last year. It really is reliant on these wholesale prices, which are unfortunately linked to the crisis in Ukraine, and also many other factors. So it's really keeping an eye on things and, preparing as best you can for any further rises.
Yeah, and it's really hard not to end up feeling like you're doom-mongering and potentially frightening people even more. But you're absolutely right. Cornwall Insight, I think, suggested that in October, when that price cap is reviewed, those prices could go up another 29%, which seems completely beyond the realm of comprehension. I wonder, for Richard, again, if you're looking at people who are trying to compare between prices, how they might do it, do you have any sense of when the fog might clear and when you might be able to actually find some good deals again, when those prices might start to come down?
I think, unfortunately, as Tara is saying, that we're not done with the price increases just yet because of the situation with Russia and Ukraine, but also other factors as well that are driving up those wholesale prices. I think we will see them go up significantly again in October. Hopefully, after that, when some of that fog does clear, we would start to see some prices come down again. But I think the really difficult situation is here. I don't think we're going back to the levels of pricing we could see. You could get a average consumption, a cheap deal around £800. I don't think we're going back to that. Would love to go back to that. I don't think we are. So while they should come off the boil to the extremes that we will see probably in October, we're not going back to really cheap energy, which raises really big questions for affordability in the long term, and making sure that those in the most vulnerable circumstances get the real level of support they need. The existing support schemes in the energy industry have barely moved. They've moved a little bit or going up a little bit, but it's nowhere near the quantum of actual costs that people are facing. So more needs to be thought about there for sure.
Charlotte, would you agree with that? Have you got a sense that, we are really at the beginning of this crisis, and actually when we look at the next, let's say, year or two horizon, certainly, it's not going to get any better, and people aren't going to be finding more money. So, looking after your pennies is one thing, but actually, if you don't have those pennies, how on earth can you look after them?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And we've seen lots of experts come out and say the same thing. It definitely feels like we're at the start of something, and that what really needs to happen is some government intervention, something beyond just, looking after, being frugal, or, taking care with this bill, or spending a little less here, and, meal planning and all these things that I've been preaching to people for, the last few years. This is not going to cut it in the longer term scheme. It needs something outside of our household money management systems that we've been using so far.
Yeah, certainly. And it feels like with inflationary forces, with global forces, that this is certainly much bigger than household budgets and household bills. Let's move on to another question, which is going to go, Richard, to you. This question from Gary, who asks, I'm going to be moving into my first home in the next couple of weeks. Well, congratulations to you, Gary. Should I look to get a fixed rate deal with my energy supplier once I've moved in, with the anticipation of the cap getting raised again in the winter? Or should I stick with a variable rate? I mean, that is a question I guess anyone who's looking to change their current plan, or who's starting a new one, might be facing. Richard, what would you suggest?
But again, congratulations to Gary on getting your first home. That's great news. The truth is, you're going to struggle to find a fixed deal that is better than the price cap, and you're going to struggle probably to find one that's better than even the price cap might be in October. That doesn't mean that it's not worth seeing what the current provider will offer. Like, when you move house, you tend to inherit the provider that is already there, and they put you on the deemed tariff, that's the price cap tariff, so you won't really have a choice of supplier. See if they'll offer you anything that's anywhere reasonable, but the chances are you're probably just going to need to stick with that price cap tariff and then see what happens in October, unfortunately.
Charlotte, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the fixed rate deals at the moment are about 40% above the price cap. And actually, even if you factor in the suggested increases that are potentially going to be happening in October, it will still be the price cap should still be less than some of those fixed deals. So unfortunately, it seems like it's just a case of holding tight and waiting and seeing.
Tara, I'm gonna throw it to you as well. I mean, I assume you're going to agree. I keep wondering, maybe someone will pull a rabbit out of a hat, but I feel like that's not going to happen. Would you agree with both Richard and Charlotte on that, Tara?
Sadly, I do agree. I would say, as Richard said earlier, there are some fixed deals coming through that are available for a matter of hours. So I would sign up to newsletters and price alerts to make sure that you can find out about those, because you might get lucky. It's also worth asking your supplier about those deals as well, because they may be offering those deals to current customers. And yeah, unfortunately, it is about, if you really are in trouble and you are in hardship, then speak to your supplier, because lots of them do have hardship funds. They have pots of cash that they are distributing to customers who are in fuel poverty. So if you are in trouble, then really do speak to your supplier. I know it's easy to stick your head in the ground, but they will be the ones who'll be able to help you right now.
That's an interesting point, actually, because this idea of reaching out human to your energy provider seems to be something that's fallen by the wayside. We think of them as big companies. We often hear of people spending days on the phone not being able to get through. Karen, is that something you've thought about doing, calling your energy provider? And if you have, what's their response been?
Well, I did contact the oil company that I'm with, and I've been with them for over 25 years. And they were just, understanding and everything, but they still wanted their money at the end of the financial year before they'd, actually give me a delivery at £800 or so. Even though I've always kept a dialogue going with them, I always let them know if there's problems, which I think everyone should do. It hasn't really helped in my situation. But I'd like to sort of mention, really, I thought it'd be great if all the companies came together and they could actually have a website or something where it's all together in one place, and if that's anything anyone's thought of, so the consumer could actually access that without having to go all over the place. It would all be in one place, especially at this moment.
Are you talking, Karen, about advice, or are you talking about comparing different prices between different companies?
Everything, but advice mainly, I think.
So I guess for competition reasons, it would be hard for them to all sign up for that themselves. But I do imagine, and Tara, I mean, what are your views on this? I do imagine that, if you go to a sort of money-saving expert, other websites are available, of course. But if you do go to some of the comparison websites, that might be a place to start. Tara, what do you think?
That would be the Sun, the money section on the Sun, but also there are lots of really good advice on Citizens Advice. They have pulled together a really good list of all the hardship funds. So if that's something you're looking for, that's a great place to start. There is loads of advice out there, and you're not alone. Do speak to your supplier.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst we're mentioning, of course, you've got Looking After Your Pennies represented by Charlotte here, and USwitch represented by Richard. There is advice out there, and it is hard because it does mean spending a lot of time on the internet trying to find that advice. Let's bring in our next viewer and our next question. This one from Jane, and I'm going to send this one, Tara, your way again. I've heard there was a deadline yesterday to send in meter readings. I didn't know about this. Have I missed out? Tara, has Jane missed out?
Firstly, don't panic. There was a deadline yesterday. It was, COID National Meter Reading Day, but you haven't missed out. Many of the suppliers are allowing you up to 7 days to submit these meter readings. Lots of the websites have been busy. Many of them have been crashing even today. Some of them have been struggling with the sheer volume. It's also important to note that if you have a fixed deal at the moment, or you have a smart meter, then you don't need to do this. But it might be wise to take a picture. If the website or your provider, you can't get online and there's no way to submit it, then I would take a photograph, because then you will have evidence, and that will help if there is any problem or discrepancy between what energy you're being charged for.
Richard, have you found that on the whole companies have been pretty good about responding to those, even if they're late meter readings?
I think, suppliers are going to accept meter readings that come at this point for the following days. Obviously, they've not been good at accepting them because their websites have crashed. But I think there is a more important point here with meter readings. It's not going to change the price you'll charge. The reason people have been saying take a meter reading is to make sure that you're not accidentally charged for usage you've already had at this new higher rate, because suppliers estimate bills when you don't have a smart meter. But it is actually really good practice to give regular meter readings every regular period. We would say once a month if you're not on a smart meter. And the reason is for that is so your energy account doesn't get out of step with your direct debit if you're paying by direct debit. The problem is when suppliers have to estimate, they can get this wrong, and particularly if you are doing things at home to save energy usage as well. The trap is that they then come after you later when you do get a meter reading, or they send someone round to do a meter reading and then say, actually, your direct debit's got to go up a lot more. A lot of the things that we've been hearing are that we obviously know prices are going up 54%. People's direct debit reviews have been much worse than that because they've been caught up with usage. And particularly as we look forward towards winter, where most of the usage we have across the year is, and that's the period where we think the price cap is going to go up again. It's so important to be up to date with that, make your account up to date, give regular meter readings so you know what you're faced with and can budget as best you can in what is a very, very difficult situation.
Yeah, that's definitely a very practical piece of advice that people can do right away, which is essentially set a reminder in your phone every month. Make sure you take a photo of your meter reading. I wonder if the websites are down at the moment, Richard, and you can't submit that meter reading, but you really want to make sure you're not paying the much higher price for previous usage. Is there any way of taking a photo, somehow dating that photo, and they'll use that as proof?
Yeah, you can do that if you want to be sure to make a note of something or make sure that you did it at that particular time. There are other forms you can give meter readings as well. It varies by supplier, but some have an app. There's a website, you can call them up. Some have an automated line, so you're not waiting in a queue. And there are plenty of different ways to do it. But it really isn't going to make a huge amount of difference whether you do it now or a week from now. The important thing is to do it at some point and then to do it regularly. And as you say, I think suppliers will be pretty good about accepting the date, putting it for the date of the 31st of March or today if you've done it today. So do take the meter reading, make a note of it, and trying to give it to your supplier as soon as possible. But just get into that habit regularly and make sure your energy account doesn't get out of step, I think, is an important thing to take away.
All right, good advice there for Jane. Let's crack on with our next question. This one from Jamie, and I'm going to send it, Charlotte, towards you. Jamie asks, with these fuel increases and poverty rife in 21st century Britain, are households going to have to cancel Christmas this year? Goodness, I mean, I can't believe in April, beginning of April, we're talking about Christmas already, but it's got to be done. Charlotte, are we going to have to cancel Christmas again? Not for COVID?
I hope not. I think if any year we need something to look forward to, but I genuinely understand the concern here with the increasing costs. The first things to go in our budget are the things that are fun and enjoyable. We strip everything back and we focus on the essentials. I would say that it's still uncertain. I think a lot of families are going to find Christmas tougher this year. I will give the same kind of advice and guidance that I give in every year, and this is that Christmas is more affordable if you think about it early. So start planning. If you could afford a little bit now, then that's great. Start putting some of that money aside. Put some plans in place, or maybe this is the year that you sit down with your extended family and you have a conversation about what Christmas means to you and what is affordable within your household. So yes, Christmas can still happen. It might just look a little different for some of us this year.
Yeah, all right, well, thank you. Let's have another question, this time from Dave. Richard, this one's for you. Dave asks, it's been suggested to me that if you do have solar on your house, you won't have to pay VAT on the electricity bill. I've been looking for some confirmation of this, or is it an April Fool, Richard?
So unfortunately, having solar panels will not stop you paying a VAT on your energy bills. I suspect where this has come from is in the spring statement, the government had announced that for installation of solar panels and other energy efficiency measures that help us use less energy, but you have to obviously pay up front, they're going to make that exempt from VAT that's currently on that. So there is a benefit if you're looking to get solar panels installed, but that comes with a big upfront cost. If you have solar panels, it's great because you will have a bit of saving if you can use that energy yourself, where you get the feed-in tariff back, so you will save a bit on bills in general, but not the VAT. That's still going to be charged for your gas and electricity that you're getting from the grid. All
right, now we are nearly out of time, so I'm very conscious that we're going to have to race through our last couple of points. Tara, this one's for you, and this one is anonymously submitted, but it says, why is the price of energy rising exponentially in comparison with the considerably less percentage rise in the EU? So why is it that we're suffering so badly in the UK? Tara?
Well, I mean, price rises will depend on the deals that suppliers have bought, and different markets will work in different ways. I think the key thing here is that they are rising everywhere. In other countries, they are also seeing rises. So it really is about, making sure that you are on top of your bills and are planning ahead. So you're thinking about, can you afford this rise now? And, if there are future rises, how are you going to budget for those as well?
OK, great. Thank you, Tara. Karen, I'd like to have the last word with you. I'd love to know, number one, if you've felt that there's advice that you can take away from what we've heard today, and also whether you feel that any political party has a plan that might help someone like you.
Well, first question is, yes, I have been listening intently, and it's lovely to hear some of the things that have been said that should help. The second thing is, I think definitely not the Conservatives. They're just not really doing much. So, I mean, I really don't know, because all of them are all going to do something and nothing ever happens for the real person, the person in the street that's working hard,
Yeah, absolutely. And Karen, it's been great to hear from you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you to all of our guests. I'm sorry we're out of time. Thanks all very much for giving us your advice. You were watching Sky News and our Q&A. Coming up, the News Hour with Jonathan Samuels. They'll be talking more about the cost of living crisis and speaking to